Listen, your boy might have cooked. You guys really liked the powerful commander decks on a budget video, so I thought I'd cook up a little bit more. This, however, is hibachi that my cousin got me. Thanks, Derek. No, but you guys really liked that video? Like a lot. This time I only did 3 decks, that being because I put a lot more work into this video. Not that I didn't put a lot into that one. I went a lot more in depth on this video, a lot more in depth on the deck building. I actually had a live stream where you guys kind of recommended some cards as well. So I got 3 more decks for you guys that are extremely powerful. They are on a budget. They are all under $50. They all have a pretty decent land base as well. So for you land base connoisseurs, you're welcome. I had a lot of fun making these. I hope you guys have a lot of fun watching it. Before we get started, if you want to show a little extra support for the channel, you can head over to the Patreon. Link is in the description. Throw me a buck over there. It helps way more than you even know. And with that, let's hop into deck 1. The first deck that won't path to exile your ever full purse, I know, pretty good, is the partner commanders Paco and Halden. Now, Halden is 2 and a blue for a 1/4. He partners with Paco, obviously. You may play non-creature spells from exile with fetch counters on them if you exiled them, and you may spend mana as though or mana of any color to cast them. While his bestest boy Paco is 3 a red and a green for a 3/3 haste. Whenever Paco Arcane Retriever attacks, exile the top card of each player's library, put a fetch counter on them, put a 1/1 counter on Paco for each non-creature card exiled this way. First thing to get out of the way with this deck, it feels intuitive to play Halden first into Paco because Halden costs 3, Paco costs 5. Don't do that. Mana ramp into Paco and then have a little bit of extra mana for like a protection spell or a counter spell. Start exiling off the top of everyone's deck, get a big pile of fetch counters, then drop Halden when you want to use some of that stuff out of exile. If you play Halden too early, you're just leaving him open to get killed. It's not the best. Past that though, this deck is all about getting tons of value by exiling and casting spells off the top, as well as creating a giant mastiff that will bite the shit out of the metaphorical leather couch that is this game of Magic. And if that sounds interesting to you, we can get into the official deck list. The first and most important part of making Paco a step-in dog shit level threat is having plenty of protection for him. So Lazotep plating, overprotect, shore up, royal treatment, and fleeting reflection are all instants that provide protection from removal, along with Faithlight and protective bubble, which are both auras with flash that provide protection and evasion, which on Paco, I think a flying dog's pretty good. The cherry on top is a negate because who doesn't like a good negate? Stops the board wipe, stops the removal. It stops everything we don't want to be happening. Start protecting Paco and you're already halfway to the win. If you would like to invest in some upgrades for this deck, I'd probably recommend picking up a Lightning Greaves, Swiftfoot Boots. They were slightly out of the budget for this list. They're obviously great. Push this up to like a 10 pieces of removal. You're sitting pretty. Paco really likes to play fetch. And what's really cool is he likes to play the non-creatures, but he likes to say, you don't get to play those creatures. I'll go ahead and have those sit in exile still. Sorry, fuck you. Get fucked. But what's really cool with Paco is being able to either tell or manipulate what's on the top of libraries, because then you can get really optimal Paco swings. Like, let's say you have a creature on top, you swing with Paco. You don't want to lose your own creature. It helps to look at top. So cards like Brainstone are great because they let us draw 3 and put 2 from our hand back on top, which we can then hit with Paco. Opt and Sleight of Hand both provide card draw with the bonus of setting the top card of our deck for an extremely cheap mana value, while cards like Memory Lapse is a counter spell that puts the countered spell back on top of its owner's library. So let's say someone plays like a really, really good, juicy, big non-creature spell. Yeah, I think I'm going to counter that and put it back on top. And then when it comes back to you, I'm going to go ahead and swing with Paco, exile the top card of everyone's deck. Oh, did I get that really cool big thing you played? Sorry. Wizened Snitches is straight up camera in the bathroom vibes because he makes everybody play with their tops revealed. Fibblethip Lost on the Ranch and Recognition Field allow us to look at our top card. Again, really useful. While Glowcap Lantern might be my favorite card in the deck though. So for 1 green mana, it's an equipment that equips for 2. Equip creature has, you may look at the top card of your library anytime. And it also has, when this creature attacks, explore. Oh, I get to look at my top card, potentially mana ramp, and potentially buff my Paco, all on 1 card that's on my Paco. Again, if you plan on making some upgrades to this list, I might recommend getting some better versions of some of these cards, like Oracle of Moldiah, the Reality Chip, Augur of Autumns. They're just more powerful at the end of the day. Now that we can protect our dog with shotties in hand, like the cold-blooded Americans we are, we're gonna need to play some cards that give us really good exile synergies, and we've got plenty of them. Doc Arlock, a grizzled genius. Ridiculous name, good card, also a bit of a flavor fail. For 1 blue and 1 green, it's a 2/3 bear. It's a 2/3 bear. Spells you cast from Exile cost 2 less to cast, which when you're casting off Exile on everyone's top card with Paco, this thing can save you a lot of mana, so I forgive it. Cards like Emoti Celebrant and Monstrous Vortex are both cards that either let us cascade or discover for just playing big spells. One, we can just do that in our deck with a few spells. Two, we're playing off the top of everyone's deck. There's probably going to be a big spell deck at the table, and you can just play those and get very high value. And not to mention discovering and cascading are casting those spells out of Exile. They even further interact with cards that we run, so yeah, it's pretty nuts. We've also got some small creatures like Memory Worm and Sisterhood of Karn. They're both early game bodies that can become late game threats the more spells we cast from Exile, as well as the worm pinging an opponent for 2. We also run Party Thrasher, which not only supplies us with Exile draw on our main phase for a discard, it also gives our spells we play from Exile Convoke. Don't need to say anymore, nuts. The 12th Doctor is a great way to start becoming explosive, as every spell we cast from Exile has Demonstrate, so we can allow an opponent to copy the spell, and if we do, we may copy it as well. He also gets a 1/1 counter every time we cast a spell from Exile, becoming kind of a pseudo threat. This guy just puts in overtime. Shout out to the live stream for recommending Kami of Celebration, because this thing's nuts. For 4 and a red, we get a 3/3. Whenever a modified creature we control attacks, exile the top card of our library. You may play that card until end of turn. Whenever we cast a spell from Exile, put a 1/1 counter on a creature we control. This thing just is the engine. It gives you the modifications, which gives you more draw, which gives you more modifications. Thanks. Great suggestion. The Lost and the Damned is an enchantment for 1 a blue and a red. Whenever we play a land or cast a spell from Exile, we get a 3/3, which is just good. Blockers, bodies to swing with, passive value, all good things. As well as Falden Dreadwolf, which will turn all of our exiles into 2/2 wolves, as well as providing a bit of exile on cards that we can cast until end of turn, which is great. Now, if you want to upgrade this section of the deck, I would probably recommend a little bit more powerful exile synergies like Nelfenchi, which will turn all of the spells we cast from Exile into copied spells. The permanents become tokens that get sacked at the end of turn. There's also Wild Mage Sorcerer, which turns all the spells we cast from Exile into spells with Cascade, which again, don't really need to say much there. Crazy good. The biggest one on your wallet though is probably going to be Passionate Archaeologist, just because it's really, really good. Commanders you control have, whenever you cast a spell from Exile, this creature does damage equal to that spell's mana value to target opponent. This can end games really quick in this deck. Again, shout out to the stream for recommending that one, because I've never ran that card. It's really, really good. It's also really expensive. So with all the digging, no pun intended, that this dog's going to be doing, I like to run a couple small packages in this deck, because it's not going to be too hard to dig for one of these spells. One of these packages is the Unblockable package. It's just really good for Paco to be unblockable. Protective Bubble, Suspicious Bookcase, Rogue's Passage all give Paco straight up unblockable, while Trailblazer Boots give him non-basic land walk, which is, you know, unblockable. If you want to upgrade this list, maybe throw in a couple of the swords, maybe like a Sword of Feast and Famine, Sword of Once and Future or something, just to give him some more protection, give him some combat triggers while he's doing damage. Now, speaking of him doing damage for free with the unblockable, we also run a small double strike package of 3 instants that can grant double strike just to like sneak home a win. Paco can turn into an 11/11 within 2-3 swings, and with a double strike card, that's game with commander damage, so being able to do that at instant speed is really strong. For that, we've got Team Your Battle Rage, Uncaged Fury, and Twin Inferno, so, you know, sneak home that win, baby. If you would want to upgrade this section, maybe pick up an Ember Cleave, honestly. The equipment that flashes in and gives double strike, gives a buff, that actually seems pretty nuts in here. Sneak that win, baby. As far as ramp is concerned, we've got Explore, Orcish Lumberjack, Planar Genesis, Simic Signet, Coalition Relic, Everflowing Chalice, Bounty Board, Mind Stone, Arcane Signet, and Soul Ring. For card draw, we've got Brainstone, Opt, Planar Genesis, Sleight of Hand, Quick Study, Atali Primal Storm, Fibblethip Lost at the Ranch, Osgood Operations Double, Precognition Field, Stolen Strategy, You Find Some Prisoners, Ignite the Future, and See the Truth. For removal, we've got Shattering Pulse, Wear Down, Wreck and Rebuild, Raven Form, Curse of the Swine, Decimate, Negate, Resculpt, Ruinous Inscription, Suspend, You Find Some Prisoners, Chaos Warp, and Memory Lapse. And then Mizium Mortars and Chain Lightning for our board wipes. Lands are on screen. If you want to check out the deck list, all of them are down in the description, by the way. This deck comes in at $49.46. And with that, we're moving on to Deck 2. Deck 2 is based around Kaith Famed Mechanist. Kaith is 1, a blue, a red, and a white for a 3/3 with Fabricate 1. When this creature enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on it or create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature. Other non-token creatures you control have Fabricate 1. You can pay 2 and tap her, choose 1, populate, or proliferate. This is a great budget commander option. It just turns every creature we play into 2 creatures, because we're also going to get a 1/1 servo. Yeah, that's the route we're going. We'll use the +1/+1 counter from the Fabricate every now and then, but we're mainly going to be going wide, and we're going to be going hard, and we're going to be buffing these servos and we're gonna be killing them. I said, wow, we're killing them. We also have access to tons of pinger cards that will just deal damage to opponents for creatures entering the battlefield or attacking. Opens us up to a lot of different ways to win the game, which is awesome. Along with some big spells that can warp the game and an infinite combo that can straight up end the game. Yes, it came in under the $50 mark and it has an infinite combo that can win the game. Pretty good. This Kaith deck definitely packs a punch, and if that interests you, let's get into it. As far as I'm concerned, small creatures that can ETB really quick and give us a bunch of fabricate triggers are what's going to be the gasoline for this deck. It's really what's going to be making it run. We've got cards like Ornithopter, Frogmite, Soldier's Companion, all to come in for 0 mana most of the time and get us some free fabricate triggers, while cards like Deputy of Acquittals, Fairy Imposter, Shrieking Drake, and Stonecloaker can bounce creatures we control back to our hands so then we can replay them and get even more servo tokens with the fabricate. This deck floods the board. If you want to take one thing away from all of this, you will have a ton of creatures in play very quickly. If you'd like to upgrade this category, I would suggest maybe taking a couple of these cards out and instead investing in a couple upgrades for the next category we're going to talk about, which is board blinks. With Fabricate being an enter the battlefield trigger, being able to blink all of our non-token stuff and then have it re-enter will give us a ton of mass Fabricate triggers, which seriously brings home a game very well. We have a couple of these right now in the form of Yorio Sky Nomad, which blinks any number of non-land permanents we control. We also have Semester's End in here, which chooses any number of creatures and or planeswalkers and blinks them. But if you're considering upgrades from this deck, I'd really suggest these 3 cards that I'm going to bring up. Lazelle's Acrobatics, Brago King Eternal, and Eerie Interlude are all going to do blinks without blinking our tokens. Lazelle's Acrobatics can actually do it twice, which, you know, could potentially win us a game. And you might say, why would that potentially win us a game? There are tons of cards in Magic that will just shoot opponents for damage for us playing creatures. Just creatures entering the battlefield or creatures attacking. I don't play a lot of red, but you guys came in clutch on the live stream because you shouted out some awesome cards I had no clue existed. Very good. We've got the classics like Impact Tremors, Witty Roastmaster, Molten Gatekeeper, which will all turn our creatures entering into damage to the opponents. But cards like Cavalcade of Calamity, Raid Bombardment, and Hellrider, however, turn our servos attacking into direct damage to the opponents, which again, this deck's very aggressive. Thank you, livestream. Now, pair any of these cards with Wildfire Elemental, which shout out to the livestream again, and it gets really scary. 2 and 2 red for a 3/3 that gives out a whole board-wide +1/+0 until end of turn whenever the opponent takes non-combat damage. Yeah, that's our pings. All of our pings do non-combat damage. Boo. Now, if you want to upgrade this section, I'd probably recommend OG Perforos because he's just the best when a creature enters do damage card. I'd also maybe think about All Will Be One, because it's a pretty powerful red enchantment that turns all of our 1/1 counters we place on stuff into damage, and we run a few cards that can give board-wide +1/+1 counters, which could interact really good with that, as well as the Proliferate effect with our commander, along with the Fabricate. I think that may have a place in here. It might be something to think about. With all these small value creatures coming out and then bringing 1/1 servos with them, it's probably a good idea to have some board buffs in a deck like this. Arcbound Shakiri, Chief of the Foundry, Intangible Virtue, Inspiring Leader, Master of Ethereum, and Prava of the Steel Legion are all anthems that give our board full of tokens a static power toughness buff, while our Steel Overseer has a repeatable board-wide buff, which is nuts in here, especially if you're going to consider putting in the All Will Be One. And then finally, we got Whirler Rogue, a 2 and 2 blue creature that will enter with 2/1/1 Thopters along with it. You can tap 2 artifacts to make target creature unblockable. The live stream was really adamant about this one. They said, I was like, I'm not sure. The live stream was like, run it. It really overperforms every time I run it. So here it is. If you want to upgrade this section of the deck, I think that Eldrazi Monument is amazing for this, being a 5-drop artifact that gives all your creatures 1/1 flying and indestructible. You have to sack a creature on your upkeep, but with all of our servos, that's very easy to do. This can definitely bring home games, as well as Feldar's Retreat, which just turns all of our land drops into a board-wide +1/+1 counter. Again, if you're thinking about running All Will Be One, great interaction there. Or it just spits out another 2/2 tokens. So if we're falling behind, drop a Feldar. Really amp the token production. As far as winning the game is concerned, playing creatures, flooding with servos, buffing those servos, smacking face, pinging opponents, those are going to be how you win 90% of the time. There are a few cards I wanted to talk about that are kind of alternate ways to bring home games. We've got Rose Room Treasurer, which is 3 and a red for a 4/3. Whenever a creature you control enters the battlefield, create a treasure token if this is the first or second time this ability has resolved. Otherwise, you may pay X and deal X to any target. Yeah, we play 1 creature with our commander in play. We've already got 2 treasures, 2 creatures, and then the next creature we play turns into a fireball. Yeah, that's a pretty good way to bring home a game, especially when we're pinging opponents with like Impact Tremors and shit. It's like, we've also got Kappa Cannoneer, which is becoming one of my favorite ways to win a game. 5 and a blue, we get a 4/4 with Ward 4 and Improvise, so all of our servos can help cast cast it. Pretty nuts. Whenever we have an artifact enter the battlefield, it gets a 1/1 counter and becomes unblockable until end of turn. So again, free damage when we're pinging. This can bring home games. And finally, we've got Brutaclad Telcor Engineer, which is 4 a red and a blue for a 4/4 that gives us a 2/1 token that gives all of our tokens haste, and then all of our other tokens become a copy of target token we control. I don't know. maybe the 10/10 token from Idol of Oblivion. It'd be pretty good if they all became those. Get fucked. Brutaclad's great. But if you'd like to pick up some upgrades for this part of the deck, maybe I'd recommend an Urza Lord High Artificer, as it turns all of our servos into mana dorks, which is nuts. Also, every 5 mana we have, we get to scratch a lottery ticket and shuffle our deck and play the top card of it for free, which is just fun. This deck can also run the Walking Ballista Heliod combo if you want to crank it up a little bit in power level. Both the cards are just good in here, giving some of our stuff lifelinks, never bad. Walking Ballista with our Proliferate on our commander, very good. Paired together, win the game, sure. Speaking of infinite combos, Tidespout Tyrant is 5 and 3 blue for a 5/5 flying. Whenever we cast a spell, we can return a permanent to its owner's hand. Pair this with one of our ping cards like Impact Tremors that deals 1 damage whenever we play a creature, then have 2 creatures in hand that cost 0, and you see where we can go with that. You just play 1, blink something the opponent controls, play the other one, blink the original 0, play the 0, blink the other 0, infinite Impact Tremors, get fucked. And it comes in under budget. I just think that's cool. As far as ramp is concerned in this deck, we run Foundry Inspector, Gold Mirror, Mirror Convert, Azorius Signet, Enthusiastic Mechanaut, Boros Signet, Silver Mirror, Iron Mirror, Ornithopter of Paradise, and Soul Ring. You'll notice that a lot of our mana ramp removal card draw is going to be creatures, because we get tons of Fabricate triggers if they're creatures. As far as card draw is concerned, we've got Inspiring Overseer, Palace Jailer, Rumor Gatherer, Spirited Companion, Akal Pakal, First Among Equals, Biden of Thassa, Mentor of the Meek, Nick Valentine, Private Eye, Shimmer Drake, Curie, Emergent Intelligence, and Idol of Oblivion. For removal, we've got Disruption Protocol, Meteor Golem, Palace Jailer, Shattering Pulse, Thraben Charm, Raven Form, Curse of Swine, Negate, Suspend, you find some prisoners. And for board wipes, we've got Austere Command and Cleansing Nova. Lands are on screen or deck list down in the descriptions if you want to go check them out. This deck comes in at $47 even, and we can move on to the third and final deck of the video, baby. The third and final deck of the video is based around Tayam Luminous Enigma. Tayam Luminous Enigma is 1, a white, a black, and a green. My favorite color combo. For a 3/3, each other creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional vigilance counter on it. You can pay 3, remove 3 counters from among creatures you control to put 3 cards from your library into your graveyard, then return a permanent card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So this Tayam deck's going to be all about playing small creatures that either have enter the battlefield effects or death triggers, and then pair those with sack outlets and then other passive death triggers on the board, and you've got a ton of value to outvalue your opponents. Even if they come out with answers, we have recursion with the commander. Our commander's really just resilient enough to just kind of face anything the opponent's doing while still becoming a mid to late game boss battle for the opponents. So if you like aristocraty, really value heavy nickel and dime gameplay, but you also like Reanimator, really resilient deck list, let's get into it. The real backbone to this deck is permanents that cost 3 or less that either sacrifice themselves to do something, enter and do something, or do something when they die that we can just start recycling over and over again with Tayam. Metastatic Evangel is fantastic. It proliferates whenever a creature enters on our side, which paired with Tayam's vigilance counters can give us plenty of counters to remove for Tayam's ability. It's just really good. Proud Pack Rhino is another one I came across on stream. A 3-drop creature that either puts a shield counter on something or proliferates when it enters, which again, great for looping tons of counters on our creature. Hallowed Spirit is a 3-drop that gives us X11 spirits when it dies, equal to the amount of creatures in our graveyard, which on the right turn can really pump out a lot of spirits. Not to mention those spirits enter with vigilance counters. Super good. Dinosaur Egg is a 2-drop that will discover equal to its toughness when it dies, which will at least be 4. Not to mention some of the 1/1 counter cards we have in here that can make it even bigger than that. And finally, Feral Ghoul is insane. It's a 3-drop creature with menace that gets huge the more creatures die on our side. And when it dies, we put rad counters on each opponent equal to its power, which in this deck, it can come back. So people are going to be milling a lot of cards and losing quite a bit of life off this. Very good. Now, if you wanted to upgrade this section of the deck, the real only card I can think of outside of just to taste whatever kind of death triggers and ETBs you like running is probably Voice of Resurgence. Every time it dies, we get a huge elemental, or anytime it's targeted by an opponent. So being able to recur this, constantly be sacking it, making tons of huge elementals on our side of the board that also enter with vigilance counters. So in order for Tayam to work, we actually need counters in play to be able to remove with this ability. So being able to put counters on stuff obviously is a necessity. Luminarch Aspirant is 1 and a white for a 1/1 that gives out a 1/1 counter on each of our turns, which is great. Good Fortune Unicorn is 1 a green and a white for a 2/2 that dishes 1 out every time a creature enters on our side, while Cathedral Acolyte comes in at 1 and a green for a 1/2 that taps to give out a 1/1 counter while also giving Ward 1 to all of our stuff with counters. Thank you to the stream for recommending this one. Very good card. Absan's Ascendancy is 1 of each of the deck's colors for an enchantment. It enters the battlefield and gives every creature we control a 1/1 counter, which is extremely nice in this, as well as turning all of our non-token creatures that die into 1/1 spirits, which also enter with vigilance counters from Tyam. This might be one of the best cards in here. We also have Vraska Joins Up here for a black and a green. It's an enchantment that gives our whole board a death touch counter on enter, and whenever a legendary we control deals combat damage to an opponent, we draw. Yeah, love that. Together Forever is 2 white, and it provides us with 2 1/1 counters upon entering, along with a recursion for creatures dying that have counters on them, which is really good. And to top off this section, we've got Thran Vigil, which is a 2-drop black enchantment that gives a 1/1 counter to a creature whenever a creature leaves our graveyard. So paired with Tyam, this is nuts. Now, if you'd want to upgrade this section, obviously picking up a Doubling Season would be a great idea, or picking up an Ozolith would be a great idea. Both very, very expensive though, so I understand. Now that we have all these small value creatures in play and a bunch of tokens that have counters on them, we're going to need ways to put specific creatures into the graveyard that we want to start looping, so sack outlets. Bartolome del Presidio sacks creatures to give himself 1/1 counters, which interacts great with Tyam's ability. Evolutionary Leap is a 2-drop green enchantment that sacks creatures to then rip creatures off top of your deck, so not only is it a sack outlet, it also replaces itself. Yahenni Undying Partisan is a 3-drop black sack outlet that sacks creatures to give it indestructible. It also has haste, and it also gets 1/1 counters when creatures die on our opponent's side. Probably one of the better cards in the deck as well. And finally, we got good old Viscera Seer. 1 black, sacks a creature to scry 1. Honestly, can't go wrong. If you'd want to upgrade this section, I think just a good old Ashnod's Altar Dementia would do you a ton of justice in this list. Turning all these small value creatures into mill or mana ramp, you know, you really can't go wrong. So with all these creatures going in and out of graveyard, it's safe to say that running some permanent spells that will benefit us for creatures dying is not a bad idea. We've got Falconwrath Noble, Sanguinary Priest, and Cruel Celebrant, which all drain opponents when creatures die. Voldaren Bloodcast gives us blood tokens when creatures we control die, and Butcher of Malakar forces opponents to sacrifice creatures when our stuff dies. All very useful for bringing home games. If you'd want to upgrade this section of the deck, obviously Blood Artist would be amazing. Zulaport Cutthroat, as they both drain people for things dying. Pawn of Ulamog is another one that just gives you Eldrazi Scions, which will then enter with vigilance counters or sack for mana. Super good in here. Definitely some solid upgrades. As far as protection goes in this deck, we have 4 pieces of it because our commander's ability kind of helps us dig for permanents that we can put in our graveyard. These are all permanents that are under 3 mana that protect our commander, so we can get it back from the graveyard easily with our commander's ability. We got Brotherhood Outcast, which enters and gives one of our creatures a shield counter, which is great protection as well as being a counter as well. Maze's Mantle is a 3-drop enchantment with flash that gives hexproof the turn it comes out, but gives a permanent +2/+2 afterwards. Bastion Protector is a 3-drop creature that gives our commander +2/+2 and indestructible, so even if it dies, which, you know, it really won't, we can just get it back and give it to him again. While Aspect of the Mongoose gives our commander Shroud and then just comes back on its own when it dies, which I kind of thought fit this theme of really resilient protection. If you'd want to upgrade this section, again, I just recommend picking up the boots, Lightning Greaves, Swiftfoots. You can't go wrong there. As far as some alternate ways to end the game, we've got a couple. We've got Endray's Forerunner. Because we're running all these small creatures, our board's kind of going to be full most of the time with tokens and tons of creatures we're cycling in and out of graves, so being able to give them +2/+2 and trample on a 7/7 haste vigilance trample, yeah, it can bring home games. We also have Champion of Lambol, a 3-drop 1/1 creature that gives itself a +1/+1 counter whenever a creature enters on our side, and also turns off blocks for opponent's creatures that have less power than it. So insane. Like, this thing is very, very good. The fact that it costs 3 and we can get it back with Tyam and it does all this, this thing will win you games a ton. If you want to upgrade this section, it's honestly kind of to taste. Pick up a Crater Hoof, pick up a whatever the one that gives all your stuff infect and +1/+1. I don't know. Win however you want. I wasn't sure where to put these 2 cards, so they're here. So here you go. We've got Mage's Attendant, which is a 3-drop white creature that enters and makes a 1/1 token that you can sack to counter a non-creature spell unless its owner pays 1. So 2 bodies that'll get vigilance counters from Tyam. The original body cost under 3. Pseudo protection and removal with the counter spell ability. I think this is really good. Not as good as the next one though. Promises of Boonrai might be the best card in this deck. A 3-drop enchantment that sacks itself whenever a creature dies to give us 4 spirits. So we can just sack a creature with one of our sack outlets, trigger the Boonrai, get 4 1/1 creature tokens. Those creature tokens all enter with a vigilance counter from Tyam, pay 3 with Tyam, remove 3 of the counters from those, get back Promise of Boonrai, sack a creature, sack the Boonrai, get 4 creep. Yeah, good game. Good game, bud. As far as mana ramp's concerned in this deck, we've got Armored Scrap Gorger, Golgari Signet, Talisman of Resilience, Wall of Roots, Everflowing Chalice, Mind Stone, Wayfarer's Bauble, Arcane Signet, Orzhov Signet, and Soul Ring. For card draw, we've got Abzan Charm, Elvish Visionary, Rumor Gatherer, Spirited Companion, Succumb to Temptation, Wall of Omens, Callous Blood Mage, Hostile Negotiations, Mentor of the Meek, Painful Truths, and Vraska Joins Up. For removal, we've got a Cursed Marauder, Demon's Disciple, Fleshbag Marauder, Grave Lighter, Plague Crafter. All 5 of those are just creatures that make everyone sack that cost under 3, and we're just gonna sack the creature itself so we can keep looping it with Tyam. Gross. We've also got Putrefy, Seal of Cleansing, Seal of Primordium, Mythos of Nethroi, Big Game Hunter, and Cankerblue. We run 1 board wipe in the form of Dune Blast. I'd probably recommend you running a couple more. Lands are on screen, or you can check out the link to the deck list down in the description. This deck came in at $48.97. And with that, I hope you enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun making this one. I did less decks because I hope you can clearly tell I put a little bit more work into this one. I'm really going all out here. I'm trying to make some videos you guys will really enjoy watching. Thank you guys for the kind words over the past month. They've really helped me get through some tough times. If you want to help support the channel a little bit extra, you can head over to the Patreon. It's down in the description. Throw me $1 over there. It really helps out a ton. Feel free to join the Discord down there. We got a ton of nerds talking about Magic. It's a good time. Make sure to subscribe. We're going to hit that 10K by the end of the year, guaranteed. Love you guys, and go play some Magic.